So it's finally here. It took me days to compile things, but I finally did it. Here's my 5th review for Dragon Warrior Monsters, called Dragon Quest Monsters Terry's Wonderland 3D. This game will be judged on 3 criteria: graphics, music, and core loop. Core loop are things that must be repeated over and over again that can be boringly repetitive or make a game incredibly fun. First up, graphics. When compared to the other 4 versions of this game, the 3DS does a great job capitalizing on the colors of the Game Boy Color game, but making everything more detailed and vivid. Although I would have liked to have seen more effort put into the faces, as it sits, they're just images that repeat over and over again every few seconds, such as the characters blinking. Something that truly disappointed me when I heard about this remake, but expected since I had played Joker 1 by this time, is that monsters no longer follow you around, which would really cause people to assume it's a Pokemon clone, even though these games never have been, considering Dragon Quest V started the monster catching craze, and that came out before Pokemon did. But Ross, how were they supposed to make giant monsters follow you around? Easy. Make them smaller in the overworld like on the Game Boy Color. One thing that makes me proud is how, and you'll hear me say this again when I get to the Joker series, unlike Pokemon, Dragon Quest Monsters has had fully 3D models of all monsters in the overworld and battle since December of 2006 on the original Nintendo DS, whereas Pokemon Diamond and Pearl came out in September of 2006 and we're still using static 2D image sprites. This game is no exception either. Terry's Wonderland came out fully 3D on the 3DS in 2012. Pokemon Black and White 2 were released the same year, still using 2D graphics for the monsters, although animated, still. Dragon Quest Monsters has been far ahead of Pokemon since its inception, and yet Pokemon gets all of the praise? Oh wow, Pokemon has sprites for all the monsters. Oh wow, Pokemon has animated sprites. Oh wow, Pokemon has a 3D world now. Oh wow, you can see Pokemon in the overworld now, even though Dragon Quest Monsters did it all years before Pokemon did. I will say that I vastly prefer the PlayStation 1 remake more though. While the differences are okay in this remake, the 2D and colors of the PlayStation 1 remake are easier on my eyes personally. Something else that really bothered me is how some bosses were changed or their order was moved around. Instead of Treeface, you now fight Big Eye, and how you can no longer walk around the boss areas. Instead, when you enter a boss hole, it loads to a stupid cutscene, taking away some exploration the original and remake had. However, some of the monster intros are terrifying. Take a look. The music is great, just like the PS1 remake, and the Game Boy Color version before it. The music here doesn't wane on the ears. Again though, I'm going to say I preferred the music in the PS1 version more. It doesn't sound as overdone as the 3DS version, that's why. Seriously, listen to the Starry Shrine breeding music. Core Loop. Battles are back, as usual. This time you can have up to 4 monsters on your team, and 4 on a reserve instead of just 3. They probably did this to account for the large Monster Edition feature, which I absolutely hate. If it wasn't broken in the first game, or the PS1 remake, then why change it? Just weaken the larger monster stats and the coding if you have to. Battles are fun, and instead of depending solely on the code working in your favor and randomly having a monster join you, or praying to God your meats work on them, you hit a scout button much like in Joker 1 and 2, although you don't have to have a ring this time. You can use this thing called Monster Bait, which is basically the meat feature from the Game Boy Color and PS1 versions to help aid your quest to have monsters join you, but it's not required. Breeding is back as usual and vastly helps power up your team, and believe me, you're going to need it now more than ever, because some bosses have had a power increase. They added something new to the post-game where some kingdoms team up to stop monsters that are trying to rule the world, much like in the Dragon Quest series this game is based on. All in all, I'd give this version of the game an 8 out of 10. I really wish it had been released in America, but these games tend not to sell very well at all. Which is why the mobile phone and tablet version, Dragon Quest Monsters Terry's Wonderland SP, was never localized in America or Europe. It is a Japan exclusive, like most of the Dragon Quest games now. What you are watching is me browsing the full website, which is still up to this very day.